Hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, today's product update. We are going to talk about the OneSwap tool and what's new there. So thanks for joining. I hope I'm audible. And yeah, so should you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will address them after the session. And once again, like to remind that whenever you sign up for a webinar, it's really handy to also ask your question in the form so we can place it into our slide deck, and then we can make sure that we will address it and nothing's get forgotten. Cool. So let us begin, and off we go. Right. So today's agenda would be we are going to talk about the OneSwap overview, right? Some key features, key benefits, why you need OneSwap, and why it's so useful. Then we'll start talking about the new features that we've added to those who already familiar with OneSwap. That would be kind of a very good insight to maybe revise the tool if that wasn't suitable back then. Right now, it might be suitable much more. And then obviously, the colleague of mine is going to join us and talk more about the technical details of OneSwap and again what's new there. And then live Q&A. So we're going to be answering your questions either from the chat or the ones that were sent to us up front. So that's the plan for today, and let's begin. Now, OneSwap is all about migration, right? So it's migration from VMware to OpenNebula, and that is the primary goal of OneSwap. And whenever I say migration, or whenever you think about migration, it's definitely something that almost everyone in tech field kind of afraid, to be honest, right? Because that already pictures a very, disaster-like situation when everything goes south and you don't know what to do. Everything's burning, services are down, and so on and so forth. So it may be a very, like, I don't know, emotionally interesting experience to think about migration. But then also sometimes technically it's also not a breeze, right? So, and probably everyone in tech field at least once experienced that technical difficulty of migrating from one software to another. Sometimes it might be easy because the software itself is just, an add-on, so nothing wrong happens or impact is very low. There are only a handful of people using it. Or alternatively, it may be like, for example, OpenNebula and VMware, right? So these are like the platforms to run services. So it's like a very once you install it, it's like a very in the core of your environment. So it may be challenging, right? And also considering that some of them may use different formats and so on and so forth. So migration itself can be difficult. Then there are some larger virtual machines that takes time to migrate, right? That may result, or you may think that it is going to result to service downtime. So, and if services are active, you don't want it to be, even if you build HA, right? So you have, like, let's say, a couple of nodes that are serving the same thing. In case one goes down, you still have another. But if one is off for migration, you may think of, like, okay, so now it's no longer an HA, right? It's only one node while we are migrating another one. So once again, large VMs and in general VM migration takes time to convert. So it's kind of something to think about why the migration might be difficult. And also the maintenance windows, right? So sometimes you may pause a service for a while. Sometimes you cannot. It's just not possible. It's like a very critical part of your business or critical part of your infrastructure, even if it's kind of serving the internal needs of of your company, it still may be very, 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 very important one. So it's you need to move these, and also you need to make sure you're cutting over the transferring the IP addresses and so on. And yeah, sometimes the workload friction, right? It's not only about just hitting a button, it's about planning and execution. So the planning stage should be well thought, and you need to make sure you're carrying over everything that is necessary. You need to make sure that once the VM is running in the another environment, it has the same access to same resources should it need to, and networking is fine, and VM is reachable and can communicate. So yeah, migration might be difficult, and we in OpenNebula we are trying to make sure that this migration uh, becomes as much a pleasant experience as much as it can, right? Obviously, it's always going to be a challenge, despite whatever tools you have. Even if you have a magic wand, in the end of the day, it is still going to be something that you will stress a little bit. But we try with our tools to make sure that it's going to be more pleasant than without these tools. So then, OneSwap, what it is, right? It's one of the collection of tools and services that we have to make the migration from VMware infrastructure to OpenNebula happen. So the purpose is dang easy, to migrate virtual machine workloads from VMware to OpenNebula. Now, it's a command line tool. So, and it's also maintained as a separate package. So you just need to install the package, OpenNebula-swap, and that's it. And you have the tool. It's fully command line. So at the moment, no graphical UI, but again, the command line itself is not that complicated. So if you a little bit afraid of it being a command line tool, no worries. It is very user friendly, and in the end of the day, there's not that many options. There are not that many options that you can add there. So um, don't be afraid of using the tool, right? Then the scope of the tool, we're not only covering like migration from an actual VMware environment, but we're also looking at uh, importing the virtual machines that were exported from the VMware beforehand. So sometimes you may allow yourself to power off the virtual machine and export it. So just to make the migration a bit more prepared and slightly easier, and even maybe slightly faster, right? So again, for that purpose, OneSwap offer the import functionality and not only the migration from a currently running VMware infrastructure. And in the end of the day, even though like VMware and OpenNebula were running virtual machines, the philosophy is different, right? So what you will end up with is a functioning OpenNebula virtual machine template plus all the images that are part of this virtual machine. So if you have, let's say, 3 disks, then you will have 3 images. And once again, the fully functional virtual machine template. Once you will boot this virtual machine up, it's going to have the contextualization package, so it's ready to use and ready to be managed with OpenNebula. So that's the goal, right? Is not only to migrate your virtual machine, but have it in the correct format with a correct set of tools. So it's pretty much hassle-free uh, migration. You don't need to then to log in and then install a loads of software. So everything will be already there. So you just spin the VM and well live happily ever after. Now the the workflow itself at a high level is again pretty much straightforward, right? So you need to set the source. So what the source is. Once again, it could be the currently running VMware instance with the virtual machines, or it could be the exported OVA, let's say, virtual machine in the OVA format. So then also there are a variety of transfer methods that Neil is going to be covering later during the more technical part of this presentation. Then you would need to map the resources because you need to place this image somewhere. And as many of you already know, that OpenNebula operates with so-called data stores. And then there is the image data store. That's the one that stores your images at rest. So basically when these images are not in use. And then we have a variety of of the data store types that we support. So either local storage or there's a shared storage. So whenever you import VM, you would need to place it to a certain data store. So that's why you would need to identify the resource where to place it. Or additionally, you may attach it to a network with a dedicated flag. So once again, you would need to supply the IDs to that command, so it maps networks according to your plan of execution. So that's where you are going to map the resources. Well, then you pretty much transfer and generate the image in the virtual machine template. And then you just validate. You validate that the virtual machine is running, that there are no errors at the operating system level. And once there are no errors and you are fully convinced that you can cut off the one on the VMware side and start running your workloads from OpenNebula. So that would be pretty much it, how in a very simple words the workflow is. And I'm going to invite the colleague of mine, Neil Hansen, and is going to cover a little bit more from the technical aspect of how it works. Hi, Neil.
Hey, how's it going?
Stage is yours.
Cool. Let me move on to here. We'll start with the configuration file. One of the things that makes it a little more user-friendly. All these are parameters on the command line, so you could do like the --vcenter and give it the address there. I found it's much easier to keep it a config file, so then you could make profiles essentially for your different styles of virtual machines, your Windows VMs, your Linux VMs, whatever. Maybe even your Ubuntu versus your Alma. So here's just some of the basic ones more. So the authentication for getting the vCenter, the ESXi authentication if you're going to do directly from that as well. And then we have the HTTP transfer option. This is mainly so you can offload the processing. You can run the OneSwap on a separate server besides your front end, and then it makes an HTTP server so that OpenNebula front end can download the images once the conversion is done. If you're lacking disk space or you just have a really busy front end and you don't want to impact your users, then that's a good way to go. We also have, of course, like the data store and network and the other placement options down below. The network and data store is where the actual template will be created to have the images in that data store and have that network assigned to the network interfaces. And then the placement options are for when you deploy the virtual machine, which one will be where it'll be placed appropriately. And then now some of the more interesting options, I think, some of these transfer options, we have a few different versions of doing it. Leaving these all false is going to do the classic one, which uses virt-v2v, and it creates a network block device overlay, which inherently is a bit slow because block devices need some lower response time to operate performantly. So it's generally slower, but it is very, very good and solid. We also have the one of my more favorite ones is the hybrid one. I'll talk about in the first, even though it's on the third there. It uses the RBV-MOMI2 Ruby library to transfer all the virtual machine disks locally and then convert them. It uses a lot more disk space, of course, but it is magnitudes faster. It is incredibly faster. Then we also have the custom convert, which just uses basic QEMU image convert. So there's probably going to be some custom stuff you'll have to do to the image after that. And we have the fallback if you need to have that. Image wait is just for how long the image takes for OpenNebula to make the image be ready. Below that, if you aren't using any of the transfers and you convert stuff, you're going to do the import. You can have the path for the OVA or the OVF, depending on which format you've got to present it in. And that's one of the newer import functions where You can essentially import whatever appliance will come in. It'll do the best effort to convert it. So just like any other virtual machine, if the guest operating system is not happy with it, there's not really a lot that can be done. You might have to do some manual work, but then we can, a lot of times we can help out with what kind of requirements are with that. Below that is even more technical stuff of like if you have a custom compiled VirtV2V, you have a specific work directory on a hard drive, an NVMe drive or something you want to use, various things like that, all the virtualization tools and the VirtIO path for the Windows stuff, because we automatically inject VirtIO drivers into Windows, of course. And then the delete extra options down there, like the delete one is, that one's in there for if you're experimenting and testing and you want to inspect the disks manually afterwards, you leave that one as false and it won't delete the disks after they've been brought over and converted. So for good debugging stuff. And then some other, like the UEFI path, if you have some custom firmware, or if you have your context packages placed in some other specific place. And then also we remove VM tools from the VM because they're no longer needed once they're in OpenNebula. A couple of the useful features that I like to touch on, but maybe don't get talked about too much in the documentation or whatever, is the network mapping. If you have your virtual networks with an attribute defined, the vCenter network match, and you give it the exact name of the virtual network in your vCenter, when it comes over, it'll scan your OpenNebula networks and assign that network interface to that network. So if you have multiple networks with one VM on multiple networks, this is a really easy way to make sure it gets to the right ones automatically. And then tagging, of course, if you have tags in vCenter, they get brought over, they get created in FireEdge, and they're also set as a separate attribute on the VM for safekeeping. If we detect it's Windows, we automatically do the VirtIO stuff. We automatically do all the special Windows settings and optimizations that we do inside of OpenNebula when you create a new template. If you're having issues, there's the debug flag that goes in there. You just set an environment variable, OneSwap debug equals 1. You can set it to whatever, just as long as it's actually set, it'll work. And it'll start dumping all the information that the whole program sees into the log. And that log does store the info along the way as well. So if you can always check on that if you are having some other weird issues, sometimes weird dependency things. I've seen some like pathing issues in the new Alma 10 with the libexec folder and stuff. And then we have the hybrid conversion. I talked about that a little bit, but yeah, it transfers all the flat VMDQ files over and then does the VirtV2V conversion locally. So the block device overlay is local instead of open network, and the performance goes way up. Okay. And now for one of the new major features that got put in, we now can import OVA and OVF, both formats. So it allows you to export your VMware package or appliance or whatever, or maybe you don't have direct access to the vCenter. Maybe you're just migrating off of someone else's vCenter over to someone else's OpenNebula or something. You can extract the OVA, bring it over, and on your own time, keep the old machine running and import the new one, make sure everything's up and good, and then cross it over whenever you like. You simply tell it where the OVA or OVF is. It makes all the images and all the templates in OpenNebula based off of the metadata found inside of that. And then that just allows you to import without direct access. And it does use the VirtV2V as well. It's an extremely useful tool for converting stuff from one virtualization platform to another. And then we build the OpenNebula template based off of the information inside. And if there's other guest prep hooks, so we still do the contextualization install, we still remove VM tools, we do Windows enhancements, we do new guest agent, all that fun stuff. The other fun feature that is also people have been asking for a lot is a Delta migration. It's more of a warm migration. It's not hot, so the VM does have to be shut down for some brief period of time. But I'll go over that here. But yeah, so to reduce that time, we take a ESSi snapshot and we clone the base disks and then convert everything over and then apply afterwards the Delta snapshot of what happened during the conversion process. And of course, the output is KVM ready disks, then we can import them into OpenNebula as a template and as images. So diagram at the bottom, you can see the kind of like the timeline of what happens. We start off with that creating the snapshot and we clone the base disks and move it over. And then that snapshot is the active snapshot for the time period. we convert that base disk over, and then we shut down the virtual machine and copy over that snapshot and apply the changes to the base disk. And then we can finalize all the conversion, do all the other optimizations, all the contextualization, all that stuff, and then import it into OpenNebula. So rather than having the VM down for all time, it's only down for part of the time. And there's also some clone options in there as well, so we can automatically clone the VM, or you can clone the VM ahead of time as well if you have the space for it. That's always a nice way to have the VM running while you're converting. One thing about Delta migration, it does need an ESXi root SSH access because it doesn't work directly to the vCenter. It goes directly into the file system of the ESXi hypervisor and modifies the disk and bring it over that way. So the VM has to be able to snapshot reliably, and you need the required packages installed, but those are brought along with the OpenNebula swap. So as long as you did install that package, it should cover everything. And then you need the working space on your both in the VMware data store and on your local data store for this, and then a little bit of planned downtime, of course. And like I said, the VM is shut down after the primary conversion, so we can kind of like say that's the stopping point. There's this time period between when we did the conversion and when the VM was shut off, and we're going to take that information and use the SE sparse tool to apply it to the new resulting disk. And then we convert it to VMware-to be in place quickly and make the template and everything there. And so there's a lot more methods now. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. So there's kind of the most of the time you're gonna maybe want to stick with the classic one. It's very simple, very flexible. There's a lot of different options where you do like straight ESXi or straight vCenter, or you can use the VDDK library, or you can do the hybrid mode or whatever, any type of mode you like with there. There's a lot of options there. And it uses a V2B, so that goes in and does a lot of other extra optimizations inside of the operating system, converting the formats and everything like that. If you don't have access to the vCenter directly, or you're OpenNebula like for security reasons or whatever, you just can't directly access the API. The OVA OVF ingestion is perfect for that. You can, as long as you can export your appliances, you can import them into OpenNebula. And then, of course, with Delta migration is where you need minimal downtime. It only minimizes it. We can't really guarantee no downtime. The best you can do with that is cloning the VM and then doing manual work to do that cutover for zero downtime. But zero downtime is quite difficult to achieve in this process. So we did the best for now is making this Delta migration where it only has the downtime for a brief period of time as it's changing over those small changes. So super active VMs might not be the best for Delta migration, just based off of transferring stuff over the network. If it's doing a lot of work inside, the snapshot's also going to be big, so the downtime will be pretty similar to doing a classic one. But in that case, you might be okay to clone it and then transfer it over, because then you can have the old one running. And if the information's changing so fast, then maybe you can do some manual stuff to change it over there anyways. But so different methods for every use case that you can think of. Okay, we had a couple questions here lined up to start up the Q&A. And yeah, first one we had submitted can OneSwap imported kind of VM and OVA format, and kind of like I said earlier, it's it really depends on the guest operating system. It's just like every other VM that you're going to migrate and import. The guest OS has to be happy about it. It has to be able to recognize the devices and everything, like have their proper drivers. And we do a lot to inject their Vertigo drivers and make sure that everything is good and compatible. But part of it comes down to if you have some certain customizations, then. And then the other one that's going to be it's a big question, really. How long does it take to migrate a VM? It wildly depends. Depends on the size of the disk. You got a couple gig disk, it might be just a couple of minutes, of course. But if you got like a 500 gig disk and you're transferring over on the Delta migration and it's really busy, so you transfer it over and there's another 200 gig snapshot that has to be transferred over after. It could take a couple hours. So it's I don't want to lie to you and say it's really quick or anything. You should be able to plan for the downtime. You should be aware of what it actually takes to migrate a virtual machine properly and plan ahead for it. Make sure you have something. And that's why I brought up the clone a couple times. Cloning VMs to have an extra copy of a VM around that you convert that one and then have your other one running is always a great option.
Good. Thank you. I think we're done with the questions that were sent to us beforehand.
Cool.
So let us take the questions from the chat.
Okay.
So then the first one would be this. Are you provide migration from vCloud Director to your solution, also known as OpenNebula?
It's mainly just straight off of vCenter. It uses the vCenter API to do that. So it's we can look into the compatibility of that, I guess. But it was intended just for straight vCenter.
Yeah, so I think vCloud, I might be wrong, but probably vCloud sits on top of vCenters anyways. So
yeah, so you just have to interface with the layer below rather than the upper layer. Just like we could do direct ESXi as well. So even if you wanted to go all the way down to there, but it doesn't do it at the top level. Yeah, then it works at vCenter level. And then let's see, do we have another one there?
We have another one. Is there a way to convert an existing ESXi cluster into an OpenNebula cluster?
I mean, yes and no. Like you'd have to reinstall an operating system and everything. It's quite involved. But I mean, possibly, sure. That's a lot of work and a lot of you could work with our architecture team and engineering team, and we could help you figure out a solution to that. Well, it is possible. It would definitely be a lot of work, and you'd want to probably have a couple extra servers to have like the buffer zone between the two as you migrate and convert over.
Yeah, so in general, it is doable, but obviously it's not with the magic wand. So it is going to take a time to prepare and make sure that the migration is slow and steady. I would imagine that you would need actually to probably somehow moving VMs to some servers while you're reinstalling the operating system on some other servers, and then slowly migrate the virtual machines into that.
Yeah,
it is doable.
Buffer system. Yeah, it's possible. I'll say that. Yeah,
it is possible. Sure, if you would like an advice from us, like the professional services, then feel free to reach out us directly, and we can work with you to make sure that this migration is handled in the right way. Good. Okay, so there is one request on the demonstration.
We do have a video out. It's a little older, so it doesn't have the new OVA and Delta migration, but on our channel we have a OneSwap in action is the title.
Yeah. So yeah, I would redirect this one directly to our YouTube channel and then check this one out, because indeed currently at the moment we will not be able to make a demo because we need to have like the infrastructure set up. But please check the YouTube channel for that. Okay. Let me have a look. We do have another. Oh, this one. Let's take this question.
Yeah.
The migration tool runs where? On the hypervisors?
No, it generally runs on the front end, but like I mentioned with the HTTP server settings, you can run it on a separate server to offload the processing and storage space from your front end to somewhere else, and then download the images from that server to the front end, and that all happens automatically inside OneSwap. But yeah, it can run either on the front end or on any other server.
Probably, I would avoid running it on hypervisors, as hypervisors need to run the VM loads. But it could be any other server if you don't if you don't want to load your front end.
No, I mean, you could even use one of your spare hypervisors. That would be a good workhorse for it. But yeah, I put it in the HTTP server code because I wanted a way to offload the work from OpenNebula servers, so you don't impact your performance or for your users. So.
Right. Thanks for the question. Then let's take this one. Is there a way to do a delta transfer as a test that doesn't actually power off the target VM?
That we've actually had a couple of requests for this recently, so we're looking into the feasibility of that. The problem with the dry run thing is that we would need to simulate the actual conversion as well to know how long it would take and know if it would be possible. So yeah, we're looking into it. Unfortunately, the possible way of doing that might be just to run that first part of the conversion and then quit. But we'll see. We're working on a solution to that because we have had some requests for dry runs.
Okay, thank you. Well, this one we definitely can say that it's open source for free. So yeah, it's just distributed as a yet another package, OpenNebula-swap, and that's it. So
yeah, and the repo is on our GitHub at one-swap, OpenNebula/one-swap. It's all open source there for you too.
Cool. Okay. So then we have this question. It's not about actually OneSwap, but still I think we can answer it. Does OpenNebula provides portal which looks like vCloud Director, portal for management and separate environment for different clients? Well, as of right now, we're operating with it's the same front end for both the administrators and clients. Should you want to make a multi-tenant setup? However, OpenNebula has API, and you can actually build your own customer portal just interacting with our API. So it's not necessary that you always stick to our front end. You can build your own. We're fully open source, so there's nothing to hide.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Then another question. Does the OneSwap tool supports VMware virtual machines that are running NSX SDN network object model or segmentation?
So yes and no. We're not going to automatically bring over your network configuration. The network configuration would have to be set up on OpenNebula side. But once that's configured, then you can just provide it with the network ID or do that network match attribute we talked about, and it'll assign the interfaces to the appropriate networks that way. But yeah, it's not. It doesn't do the entire environment. It's just for virtual machines. It can't. I mean, it's possible in the future we could recreate network configurations in OpenNebula from vCenter, but for right now, the difficulty clip is a little bit too steep. So.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So small steps at a time.
I mean, the big OVA and Delta migration are big, and have been quite big steps though, because that just allows a lot more options for people to move, especially those who may not have direct access to vCenter API from the front end. I think is the big thing there.
Right. Okay. Do we have any more questions? Feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and thanks for being active. Alternatively, if we've after the session, you'll come up with some of the questions and the session is already over, no worries. We have our community forum, so you can drop a question straight to the community forum, or your question might be already answered by someone in the community. Sure. So feel free to check out our community and become an active member.
So we got another question here.
Yeah, we have another question. The migration tool is a one-way direction, right? Does the source VM still remain on the ESXi host?
So yeah, we're not going to delete your resources. In fact, on those configuration, that's default to not delete the disks that get brought over and converted, just for safety purposes. If something goes wrong importing the image or something and the disk has been converted there, then it's still accessible. It's the name of the game is safety here. We don't want to destroy any data at all. It's on you to destroy the data once the cutoff has been achieved.
Yeah, I'd say it's a very sensitive and very, it's like an open heart surgery. So you would like to be double sure or triple check yourself before removing that. That's why we're keeping that virtual machine running.
Yeah, I mean, we have no idea how crucial that workload is, so we assume it's the most crucial workload in the world.
Oh, I think that's the right way to approach these kind of things, because, well, when you work with data, it's or anything that might be, keeping some systems alive. You should really be careful with that. Good. When migrating a virtual machine, is it possible to associate it to a certain user group and users, right?
You'd probably have to end up doing that after the items have been created in OpenNebula. I'll double check and see if we put that behavior in, and if not, I'll put it as a feature questionable, because that's a useful feature.
Yeah, that's definitely something useful. But then we need to assume that the user is there in the OpenNebula environment, and if it's not there, then probably create one, or maybe assign to one admin. So there are things to think about when it comes to this feature.
Yeah, we'll evaluate a few different things and maybe put options in there so you can tell it to do that.
Cool. Thank you for the question. Right. Don't forget to explore our documentation. Actually, the OneSwap is documented, so you can check out the documentation and how to use it with the commands, and with also the config files, pretty much well described in the documentation. So yeah, feel free to check this one out if you have any doubts on how to start or how to configure OneSwap. Yeah, documentation is your friend.
Absolutely.
And it's also a good opportunity to announce that we have other webinars, for example, the upcoming AI Factory webinar that we are going to host next week. So yeah, feel free to sign up for other webinars and make sure you get notified. And we run a lot of different type of webinars, from product updates to some specific narrowed down feature exploration or different how-tos. Yeah, so don't miss our upcoming webinars and trainings, and go directly to the webinars page. Right. Do we have any more questions? Yeah, we do. We do. Will you both visit Open Next 2026 in Brussels? We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
it depends on our availability.
I'm over in the US, so it's a little harder for me to get over there for everything.
Sure. But we'll see how it goes. Depends on the availability and whether the company has some plans for us.
We generally do, so there'll be a presence there from us for sure.
Definitely. Any plans to migrate virtual machines in batches, for example, both database and front end at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, we would like to extend some automation features. There is one thing I could shout out is some the company that's worked with us in the past, Encore Tech, has made. They have like a stack storm automation system that works with the OpenNebula API, and they extended it to work with OneSwap as well. And then they've automated a bunch of their migration patterns. So I would recommend to look up the Encore Technologies GitHub, and they have some stack storm information on automation. So you could do stuff like that with the grouping of VMs and putting them in specific orders and whatever like that. Some more customization of the grouping and automation of it. So there are some tools out there already actually for stuff like that.
Good. Right. Any more questions? And again, thanks for your questions. Thanks for being active.
A lot of good questions.
Yeah. Definitely. And we also already got some feature requests using chat. So
absolutely.
it's amazing.
It's nice. Yeah. But sometimes when you're deep into it and you're writing all the code, you don't realize, like, oh, that would be a useful feature.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, that's the power of open source, right? So everyone can try to use this one and then suggest something. Good. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or if or once the session is over, then join our community and let's keep in touch in our community on our community pages. Right. So if there are no more questions, then I would like to thank you all for attending. Thanks, Neil. Oh, sorry, we have one.
We do have one.
Take it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Is the OVA import a regular feature? Sometimes a VM is only available that one for installation.
I guess, I mean, like regular feature, as in, it's just one of the options for OneSwap. It's just a different form of how to bring in stuff. It's like on the command line, instead of OneSwap convert, you do OneSwap import, and then provide it with the OVA file. But yeah, that's kind of what if the vCenter isn't available, like the VM itself isn't available or whatever, that's kind of what the OVA. That's exactly why we did the OVA feature. Was for that,
yeah, it's still the same command. It's just OneSwap import or OneSwap migrate. So it's basically all-in-one tool, and so you don't need another tool to be installed, or you just install it and then figure out whichever way suits this particular workload.
I mean, if you're having issues or whatever, we have that forum, and if you're in our support system, then the support system as well, of course.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen. Right. Any other questions? We'll be happy to answer, so feel free to drop them in the chat. Well, yeah. So then, if there are no questions, again, thanks for attending. Neil, thanks for be here with me and answer all these amazing questions.
Yeah.
And yeah, so once again, follow us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and join us on our community pages. See you next time. Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.